And it hits me, oh my gosh, this is that triangle.
You know, there's explanation for everything that occurred in the Rendlesham Forest incident that doesn't involve aliens at all.
It was completely silent. It comes right over our heads.
He saw a classic flying saucer really standing in the clearing.
He turned over to my father and held his hand, and he looked in his eyes and he said, "We're not alone."
Welcome to Podcast UFO for our live show. We're live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on podcastufo.com. During the show, feel free to participate live in our chat room. And don't forget to like us on our very active Facebook page.
And welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host, and our guest this evening is Connie Willis. No relation to me, Martin Willis, but she's been in broadcast radio, TV, and the film industry for over 20 years. You may have seen her reporting or hosting, anchoring on ESPN or Speed or UPN or Disney, Oxygen, or she may be pitching products and infomercials. She's a great conversationalist. She's into paranormal and other topics. We're going to be talking UFOs. We may go off that subject a little bit this evening, so fair warning to you die-hard UFO fans. We may be skipping around a little bit tonight. But before our guests, we have the great, the one and only, and very busy Alejandro Rojas coming up with the UFO news. And just a quick mention, I'm sure you've heard it before, but if you haven't, we're running live right here on podcastufo.com every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're still on the Dark Matter Digital Network, and we're on there Thursday evenings from 9 to 11 p.m. That network is going strong, and Heather Wade is going strong in Art Bell's seat and getting a lot of great guests. So from what I understand, that her audience is growing all the time, so check that out. And we're going to try to take some calls this evening, so if you want to call in, 603-967-4030. And remember, you can always listen live for free to the whole show right here at podcastufo.com. And let's bring in the busy guy, Alejandro. How are you doing?
Busy.
I know.
I'm doing well, though.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to see you and everyone else.
That's right, and we'll all be rolling in pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a few short days away, so there's lots of loose ends. Now it seems like I'm just really busy with people contacting, needing details and stuff, but lots of media attention as well. Maybe people saw it. If not, you could check out, the Open Minds UFO Facebook group or Twitter or whatever. But we were featured on MSN.
Wow. So listeners out there, if you are a first-time listener or you haven't been listening for a while, we are talking about the UFO Congress that's going on in Phoenix, Arizona next week starting February 17th and Wednesday. I'll be doing a live show from there. So far, I have Ben Hansen, Chase Klitsky, oh, God, I can't remember all the others. A number of them, perhaps Stan Friedman and a number of other people will be joining us. It should be a great... Oh, yeah, Sam Moranto. He'll be joining us as well. So next week it'll be great. And I cannot wait for this. You have so many awesome speakers. And I'll be working the soundboard. So if you're looking to meet up with me, I will not be running the camera. I'll be the sound guy, right, for a few mornings.
Yeah, so people will be, if they can't hear very well, they'll be saying, turn it up or turn it down.
Right. And I'll probably wear a UFO cap, Exeter UFO cap.
Good idea.
So people can know that it's me. And maybe I'll put a great big smiley face alien name tag on or something.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, figure something out. So what's, besides you being crazy busy getting ready, what else is going on? Have you been able to look at any UFO reports?
Well, we do have a couple that have been posted on the site, but, one piece of news that I'd like to share with everyone is that Bob Dean's not dead.
Bob Dean's not dead.
So you haven't heard this?
No.
So there are rumors and everything going around that Robert Dean, he was a master sergeant. He says that, he had seen essentially some UFO files that didn't get out to the public. And he's been, he comes to the conference often. He lives in Tucson. There are rumors that he passed away. And then a researcher went on the air last night and said he had, or the night before, and it's not true. He has not passed away. He actually lives in this area now, and many people have contacted his wife to confirm that he has not passed away. So
that must be a great feeling for him.
Yeah, huh?
I can't remember. There was a celebrity. There was rumors going around, and he said, I'm quite alive here, or something like that.
Mark Twain said, the rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated. All right. Well, a couple of sightings, though, from this last week, posted by Roger Marsh, who is the director of communications for the Mutual UFO Network, and he posts UFO sightings from MUFON on our website. Probably the most exciting and controversial is one from the Spokane Valley in Washington. This was actually a video taken January 26, 2014, where you see this light that is kind of blinking, and an object drops out of it, which is kind of interesting. James Clarkson is the Washington State Director out there. He spoke at the UFO Congress last year. He's a great investigator, great guy. I'm a big fan. They did quite a bit of research. He worked with a scientist on this who worked for NOAA, and they are looking for radar data, but they kind of did a lot of investigation, and they feel that this is an unknown object. So they are not sure what the heck it was. So it's kind of an interesting video. There's a few people who believe that it's a Chinese lantern, and it's a flame, like it's a piece of the lantern falling from the Chinese lantern, and that's what you see. I'm not so sure about that. The witness testimony wouldn't match up with that, but it's a really neat sighting. It's a very interesting video.
Right, and it's the second time. If you watch the video, and you can get to that in our show notes or over at openminds.tv, if you check out that video, you'll hear the excitement that these people are talking in the background who are filming it. Also, there's an account of it zigzagging, and the wind was calm that night and all that. And if that account was true, and this was the second time they'd seen this, then yes, it is quite an interesting sighting.
Yeah, so it's kind of cool. I definitely encourage people to check it out.
And you got one other, huh?
Yeah, another one, which came with an interesting drawing, and it's from Alaska. A witness who saw something in Old Harbor, above Old Harbor in Alaska. This sighting was January 14th, 2016 at 8:15 p.m. And you see the object, it almost looks like a cruise ship in the sky or something. Let me just read you what the witness had said. Mm-hmm. The witness was going to the gym to pick up her daughter. She says, as I rounded the corner by the culvert, I thought I saw a shooting star off to my right towards the hillside. As I got to the store boat harbor area, I realized it was three blinking lights close together. I thought maybe it was a remote control airplane or a drone because it was really dark out, too late for planes to fly and too close to the hillside. When they got to the school, she saw her girls were swinging, and her daughter came running to her at full speed, saying excitedly, "Did you see that, Mom? It was a big drone or something right above us. It hovered right above us." So she says the object was traveling really fast, and it took a sharp left turn, and it headed towards a nearby airstrip. But she thought this thing was pretty strange.
I wonder if it could have been a drone.
I guess it's still possible. This multi-layered thing, I mean, I'm sure it's possible. I mean, drones can do some pretty, drastic maneuvers.
Right.
So I suppose it's possible.
And they can hit like 60 miles an hour, which, if they're close, looks pretty fast. It's awful hard to say. Alaska has always intrigued me because it seems like there's a lot going on there, and there's so much vast openness there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, this one, the daughter said she felt that the object was 8 feet above her and that it hovered there for a few minutes. She said she estimated the size of the object to be about the size of a hood of a truck. Oh. So it'd be pretty big. She thought it was some kind of drone tracking her.
What about sound? Did they talk about any sound?
Let me look. Please hold.
Yeah, sure.
Do 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 da da da. When I used to do the show, I early on I would call the guest after I did the news, and often while the phone was ringing and stuff, I would do that music. That was my calling music. Do 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 da 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 da. But I did find your answer. She did say it sounded. She heard a buzzing noise, almost like a blow dryer.
So it very, very well could have been a drone.
Yeah, because a drone would sound similar to that. So that's Under Investigation by Alaska MUFON.
Well, thanks so much, Alejandro, and we'll be seeing you in just a couple of days.
Yeah, really exciting. So we'll see you soon. Everybody should keep an eye to the media, too, because we're going to have Fox News is going to be there. There's going to be some other media, so we should have some good media coverage of the UFO Congress. And we usually get pretty good coverage because I direct them to what I want them to see. And so we'll see how that goes.
Excellent. All right, everyone, hang in there for the quick music break, and we'll be right back with Connie Willis. Hello, Connie.
Hey.
Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. This is great. I was posting it as the Willis and Willis show. I hope you're okay with that.
I'm okay. And
how often can I do that, you know?
That's right. I guess we
Willis squared.
Well, set the record. We're not related that we know of. But you.
That we know of.
Yeah, but we both have roots in England as far as we know.
Absolutely. That's where, I think in England we're like supposed to be a Smith or a Johnson over there. Very common.
We're everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. So you have a very interesting background. And the fact that you're actually into the topics that we explore here makes it even better. You want to tell the listening audience basically your background, and also you can tell us a little bit about how you got interested in the paranormal aspect of things, along with UFOs and abductions and all that other stuff.
Right. It's funny, the only people that really say paranormal, and that includes everything, is TV people. And so because when you're in TV, you got to say paranormal.
Right.
They don't understand that pretty much UFO is, people, we don't really put it in the paranormal, but they do. So they just put it all under one word. So you kind of got to do that. But, let's see. I was going to do a Steve Martin line, but I don't know if I can do that one anymore. But it was funny when he did it. But, I don't know. I've been in the paranormal all my life, just not out of choice, just because it came to me from my earliest memories. But also from my earliest memories, I was going to be in TV and radio. That's just the way it was. It was really just film and TV. Radio was never on the list, where radio ended up being one of the top things in my life, where it was funny. Going to the University of Kentucky, I had to take some radio classes. And I was like, I don't want radio. Film and TV, that's it. I don't want radio. But radio was like number 3 on the list. And I remember my professor, Clay Gauntz was his name. I ended up loving him so much that if I ever had a child, I wanted to name it Clay, just because of this guy. He looked like George Carlin. And he would try to be, you look at him and try to be serious, but he had said one day when I said, I don't really want to do radio, he was like, you're going to find out that that's going to be your best foundation. And he's correct, and you could probably vouch for that because you're live. You're always live, and you just have to get through it. You have to do it, and if you fall down, you pick yourself up and you keep on going. You don't sit there and worry about it, or you don't say, cut, do over, which can drive you nuts for sure. But I always knew I wanted to do TV, radio, in the media of in some way. But I knew when I started interning for news stations, I was like, no. I thought I wanted to anchor the news, but pretty much in order to anchor, a lot of times you had to be a reporter. And I was already while interning, I was getting top stories in Louisville and Lexington because I went to Kentucky, but it wasn't fun at all because it was a car accident where somebody was killed. It was a fire where there, was fatalities. And I thought, this is not what I want to do. I don't care if I get the top story. It did not matter at all. It just wasn't fun. So I knew things would start happening. I fell into a radio show before I graduated UK, and I was in broadcast radio. Before I graduated, I was doing some television with Good Samaritan Hospital in-house, making, I think it was $60 an hour. I mean, how cool is that? Where you're going, I'm making $60 an hour, my first gig. You get to work 2 hours, but hey, that's like one of the coolest things ever. So I was doing what I was doing immediately and doing some film, working on real films, CBS miniseries. When the Brat Pack was around, I was working on some of that. And, I was doing exactly everything I wanted to do. But then along the way, I was doing sports and Disney and all these different things. It was great. It was fun. But at one point, you want to take your passion and mix it up with your career. And that's when I started at least kind of letting it out that that's what I wanted to do. Because I was always taught by agents that, you're selling product on HSN or QVC or infomercials, or you're on this network or, whatever the show was. And they would say, if you start talking about Bigfoot, if you start talking about ETs and you start talking about UFOs, no one's going to believe you anymore. They're not going to buy product from you, and you're not going to have any work. And I tell you, I held on to that for a long time and struggled with it because I wanted to talk about my passion. And it would come out because, if people asked me about it, I would talk about it. I didn't have that filter of, I shouldn't do it, which maybe I should have in some circumstances. But, I just at one point said, this is what I want to do. And I would stop holding back because I did find myself holding back and that it wasn't working on either side at that point. You got to be free, So, here I am, and it is true. The paranormal world, there is no money in it, so it is a survival. It is a passion for sure, but it is a passion. And if that is something in your blood, you want to know the answers, you want to know the truth, and you want to be around other people that you can speak openly about it, and maybe try to figure it out. Yeah,
I think that's as much as we can ever hope for. And, certainly in the UFO field, that's all I really hope for is just trying to look for the answers.
Yeah.
And also speaking to some very intelligent, interesting people with good points of view. That's been a fascination, and I really enjoy doing that. And the listener, we are on with Connie Willis, and if you'd like to jump in the chat room, it's very easy. If you're listening, you're live, you're listening right on the same website, just 2 clicks and you're in. And also, if anyone would like to call in, we tried the number and it is working. For some reason now it's working. So you're welcome to call in at 603-967-4030. And so, Connie, you have hosted Coast to Coast a few times, and we had a question come in because I think it was back in February. You had a guest on that was talking about the Montauk project. So the question came in. A question came in from Kelly. She wanted to know if you've ever personally researched that.
Well, absolutely. Just more so just because of preparation for the show. Talking with Preston Nichols and Christopher Garantano, and I always slaughter his name. He's a great guy. It's just like, hey, Christopher, where'd that name come from? But he's a wonderful guy, by the way. He did a documentary on the Montauk Project and did a really, really good job. And so, when he was ready with it, I'd been talking to him for a couple years, and finally, he was to a point to go on air with it. So we went on air with it. And before that, too, I learned all I could about Preston Nichols, being a part of the Montauk Project. And one of my craziest shows ever. I've been with Coast for over, I guess, a year and a half now, and that was probably one of my most memorable. In fact, it was on Valentine's night, because some of the things he said, I remember. It was almost a year ago, coming up here soon. But the Montauk Project was, just... The crazy thing about it is a lot of people can relate to it. A lot of people talk about it. They enjoy the story of it. They try to pull things together and look for the evidence. But another thing is a lot of people say there's absolutely no evidence except for these people's story.
I've heard that. Do you want to go over what that is supposedly happened?
Well, it's kind of a mixture of a whole lot of things. ET's involved, government's involved, there's conspiracy, there's young boys were raped, things were, you could sit in a chair and you could manifest something to come alive. And in fact, at one point, a giant Bigfoot came alive, and in some stories you heard it was 30 foot tall, and other stories you heard it was 10 foot tall. It had so many different things. In fact, the Montauk Project, you should get that as the latest documentary, because it really is good, and it really shows you the fear and what these guys are going through. The more interesting thing to me about the story, and I think even with this question that you had, was the fact that within the past several years before I even did that show, I had met a lot of guys, a lot of kids between 18 to 24, boys, young men, that called themselves super soldiers, and they basically were describing that. And they called themselves super soldiers. What they say is they would fall asleep, and that's when they would be taken, and they would be taught basically superhero type things, or those, they already had the abilities, but it would be turned off and on. And they would, like, let's say one kid would fall asleep, and they would take him, ET or government. They said different things, different times. Each person kind of said something different. They were all trying to figure it out, but they would be taken, and they would be taken either somewhere on our planet in the future, or maybe past, or some other planet, and they would be. Their abilities would be turned on, whatever their abilities might be, and they all had different ones, and some were better than others. And they would have them basically train for some sort of fight or some sort of military event. Some of these guys would say that they were on some other planet or wherever they might be, and they might fight a dinosaur. They might fight, Goliath. And then they would They exhaust themselves, then they would take them back. They'd be in bed. Next thing you know, these guys would wake up, and they would have marks all over their bodies. They would no longer have any abilities. It was just turned off like a switch. And they're called super soldiers. And it really, sounded like the Montauk Project. And all the guys that are considered super soldiers, they will talk to you about the Montauk Project as well. They believe it's still going on.
Now,
and they believe they're a part of it.
Is this like all repressed memories?
Some people can just bring it up as if it just happened. Some people have done some hypnosis, but I think for the most part, most of these guys remembered a lot of it. And that was the scarier thing for them as well, because they were like, I'm not even forgetting this. And I'm waking up and I'm seeing, I was fighting a dinosaur, and that thing nailed me with the tail right across the face. And I looked in the mirror and I got a slash across my face. So it's really interesting. It's really intriguing. But I got to tell you too. I mean, you might go, oh, it's these kids. They're playing these video games. They're falling asleep with it in their head, and they've been playing too many hours. A lot of people want to say that. However, these kids, they're very intelligent. They're frightened as well. They're not happy about it in any way, shape, or form. They kind of stick to each other, and even individually, you know, they're kind of just the ones I've talked to now. Maybe there's some others not. So if they're listening, I don't want them to think, well, we're not all introverts. But just talking with them, they do have they have abilities that I think are extremely strong, but they say it's nothing to what they have when they're taken. But I've seen some unbelievable psychic abilities from them, just saying that, you know, they're not really given much of anything of what they really can do. It's really a scary thing. And is it still going on? I don't know. I mean, you know, you talk about 411 and you know, the David Paulides, I always say
right.
Paulides, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I slaughter his name as well. Sorry guys. He's got, you know, kids being taken and people being taken, and then they're dropped back down, you know, because it seems like they've been lifted up and then they drop back down somewhere else, you know. So who knows?
I love listening to those stories. It's amazing.
So maybe that stuff is still going on, you know.
Yeah.
People don't talk about that kind of thing.
Now, was remote viewing was actually, you know, part of the government. It's, you know, I mean, that stopped, I think, in the 70s, if I remember right. So this is almost like a spin-off of this a little bit.
Yeah, I guess, you know, I've been blessed to be able to say I'm a student of Lynn Buchanan's, and he was one of the psychic spies, and getting to know and also interviewed Joe McMonagle, and you got Paul Smith, and, you know, it goes on and on with these guys. They're great. They were all the psychic spies and the ones that are still alive and around, and they're just unbelievably intelligent, and they have a lot to teach, and they love it. It's in their blood. If you ever get to take any classes or courses with any of them, do. Definitely do that. But, you know, that was a secret in the military. And then, you know, for 20 years, and they say it didn't work. Well, okay. Well, if something doesn't work and you're trying for 20 years, well, my gosh, you gave it your best try. But you know, you ask them, hey, do you think this stuff is still going on now, or is it even, you know, way more advanced than what you guys have done? You know, they either can't say, or, you know, they know and they can't say, or they don't know. Because they're retired. I don't know. I can't imagine some of the best minds. They're not calling on them unless there's people better. But I can't imagine that this stuff is still not going on, whatever it is that is going on. I think the Montauk Project was also funded by possibly, you know, these are all stories. Who knows? Mm-hmm. But I think they said it was funded by somebody else outside. I think some people have said it was government. Some people said it was ET. It was a combination of them, but it was also some private funding. So at that point, it can be all different, you know, than just plain straight out the government, like the psychic spies and Project Stargate, which is what you were talking about. Yeah, I think, how could you not? If you've got a psychic spy and you have learned how to tap in psychically, you got to keep doing that, right? Why would you stop that?
Right. Now, there's a question up on the message board. Can you give any examples of successful remote viewing targets? From,
like, people I know, or?
Just in any examples. It's a question on the message board, so it's sort of vague. Are you familiar with any remote viewing targets that were successful?
Well,
I mean, probably all secondhand stories, like I've heard. I mean,
yeah.
But you not personally.
Yeah, well, you know what? You know, I've heard a lot of them too, and sitting in class with Lynn Buchanan and talking with these guys, all these different remote viewers, and reading books from these guys. Ingo Swann, I mean, the best of the best. Well, yeah, absolutely, or they wouldn't continue it on.
I misread that question.
Now,
the person was
okay.
asking if you ever had any remote viewing yourself.
Oh, I've done it. I'm an advanced remote viewer. However, if you know anything about remote viewing, it is almost like chess. It's martial art of the mind. And you have to constantly practice it and practice it and practice it. It is not just something you sit there with your mind and you're a psychic. It's very different from that. You actually have pen and paper and you are drawing, or you can use clay to make, what you're seeing 3D. It's really, really artistic, fun, intelligent. It's an incredible thing to please learn if you're into that. Take advantage of this while people are still alive to teach you the real McCoy and nothing outside of the military, even though some of them do differentiate a little bit from the shortcuts that they've learned. Still do it from the guys that were doing it, or the people derivative of it, like Lori Williams is incredible as well in teaching that. But yeah, I've remote viewed, and we can all do it. And I remember one of my targets. You don't know what your target is. Basically, when you're learning how to do it, they take pictures that they've cut out of random magazines and they put them in envelopes, and they stack 100 envelopes, and you count down. You pick a number between 1 and 100, and like 33, and then they say top or bottom. So then you count down, 33 from the top or bottom, whichever you choose, and then they take that envelope and set it aside, and that's your target. So you don't know what that is. They don't know what it is. It's just there. It's blind for everybody, and you just start doing the protocol of what you're taught of how to do it, and your something, your soul, your conscious, your subconscious, your something goes to that area, and you can start describing it. You feel the temperature, and you're taught to realize what the ambiance is. You have to be taught to stop, smell, feel, taste. You're taught to use your senses once you're over there. There was a time I was in Finland, and I think it was 17 something in the 1700s or something. I was actually next to this church setting, and there was a fence, and there were people outside of it, and there was this little kind of ditch area, and it was snowy, cold, and all I knew was I was just learning how to do it, and I just kept seeing this kind of fence post, and I kept drawing it, and it was cold, and I was in a shadow, and then finally, I saw this church and this steeple and the cross on top of it, and you're drawing all this stuff too, and when I looked at the picture after I was done, it took me about 45 minutes or so. And I was learning. This was basic 101 course. When I was done and kind of exhausted of, let me see how I've done. And I saw the picture, I could tell you exactly where I stood, or whatever my subconscious or whatever piece of me was there. I could tell you exactly where it was. It was unreal. It'll change your life to do it. I mean, it's. I was on Easter Island. I saw Easter Island. Whether I ever get to go there physically or not, I've been there. So it's pretty neat. It's really cool to do. I hope you get a chance to do it.
Well, it's funny. I was on, I don't know if you've ever heard of Mac Maloney. He does a show on UFOs, a lot of military involved in his shows, does a weekly one. And he asked me on one time, so I was on with him. And just he sprung this on, it was live, he sprung on me. All of a sudden he says, okay, I have something right in front of me on my desk right now. You need to remote view and tell me what it is. So I just said a second. I said, it looks like a turtle. And he said, you got it. It's a hard hat. That's as close as I've ever done.
That's pretty good. Have you remote viewed? Have you learned it?
No. I've never even thought of it. But, he just did that kind of for fun, type of thing.
Well, Remember Men Who Stare at Goats?
Oh yes, yeah.
Okay, when they were putting that together, it was in Miami, they were doing a lot of stuff, or at least some casting. And I remember I was in Florida at the time living, and I was calling them up going, hey, I'm a remote viewer, being in film and TV, that's what you do, right? You always have to audition and always tell them, hey, I do all this stuff. And they were like, oh, you're a remote viewer. I'm like, yeah. And of course, not realizing, these are just casting directors. They know really nothing about it. They think it's a psychic thing, which it is not psychic, to that extent that people think at all. And she was like, oh, well, then tell me what's in my hand right now. I was just like, oh, I just want to go choke her, because it's a protocol. You have to set down a piece of paper and pencil and you start doing phases. And so it's just so very different that, kind of irks any remote viewer when people think it's psychic. It is, but it's not,
Mm-hmm. Now, this show, of course, is about UFOs, so we have to touch on the subject, at least in the first hour, a little bit. Have you ever looked into that topic, and have you ever had a sighting yourself? Yeah.
I've seen some pretty cool things, and all over. I've seen things in Kentucky before. Seen a lot of things off the coast of Florida when I lived there, off of Sarasota, off Longboat Key. I would sit out there at nights and just look out in the Gulf. And you would think you might not see, I don't know, maybe not see that much, but I saw a whole lot of things, and very, very interesting things. There was one time where, it just, something said, look up. And I looked up, and I looked right where, something caught my eye, and I heard this. It's not voices in my head. Most of the people that listen to your show, I'm sure, understand getting messages of some sort where you're not sure where it comes from, but I heard something say, look, it looks like a star. And I looked, and I was like, oh, that looks like a star. And then it started moving, and then something behind it was or beside it, I guess, was it started moving, and something kind of started following it, another light. And it kind of made like this gigantic horseshoe kind of shape in the sky. And this thing was following it. It was not hooked onto it. It was not another piece of it. This thing was following it. And it appeared to me to be in like just way, 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 way out there, not in our atmosphere, but way out there. And then it got to a point, and it just stopped, and so did the one that was following it. And it just shot out into outer space real fast. It was unreal. Wow. And somebody else saw it with me. So it was great that we just watched that going, holy cow, that was great.
Was this way off in the distance?
It was way, way up in the sky. I mean, it looked like a star. It was definitely, it was way up there. It was outside of our atmosphere. However, then it went out into outer space. I mean, after that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It was not something close by. It wasn't like a plane or helicopter or anything, around here.
The thing, this is just occurring to me while we're talking about this is, I imagine that there's all types of detection out there, and there's so many people talking about seeing things coming through or up in the upper atmosphere. So these things must be detected. I can't imagine that they're not.
Well, here's another interesting thing. I called my brother at the time the next day, and I said, oh, my gosh, you wouldn't believe what I saw. Now, the brother that I called happened to be in the Air Force at one point, and now he's a pilot for UPS. So he's always up in the sky, and an ex-Air Force dude. And I'm like, and by the way, he lives at the bottom of South Mountain. He moved there a year after the Phoenix Lights. I'm like, oh, you have no idea where you are. It's like, that's so cool. Why didn't you move here a year before? Maybe I would have been there for the event. But I told him about it. I said, I told him about the lights and what they did, and I wrote different things down. I have it somewhere written out. It was like June 6th that it happened, and maybe 2006 or 2010. But anyway, I wrote it down, and he said, let me ask you, was there anything in the news about, something happening with a space shuttle or something out there? And I was like, I don't know. And he said, well, go get a USA Today. Go get some sort of national paper. He said, USA. He goes, well, I got a USA Today in front of me. And he opens it up, and here's this little paragraph. And he said, let me just tell you something to look for whenever you find something or whenever you see something in the sky. He said, I want you to look in some sort of national paper, and I want you to look to see if there's anything in it that refers to what you've seen. And he pulled something up, and there was a little paragraph. Absolutely. Last night, I think it was one of the satellites connected with another one, or it might have been the space station, something connected with something else. And he said, is that what you saw? And I said, well, no, nothing connected at all. Something followed something else, but nothing connected. And he said, well, this clearly says it's something connected. He said, I just want you to know that whenever you see something, see if there's not something that can kind of debunk you a little bit and just be like, no, maybe you just got it wrong, because here's what happened. I found that interesting from my brother, who was in the Air Force, retired.
Wow.
To tell me, hey, here's, why don't you notice this in the future, that there's always going to be something to kind of just play it off a little bit. I found that very interesting, that it was actually in the paper, there was a blurb. But no, that is not what I saw. And that's just, I've seen other things too up in the sky. There's so many things. If you just look, you'll see stuff. And I was very lucky, very blessed to be apparently the only person, is how it was touted, and I was happy about that, to stay at Jesse Marcel Jr.'s ranch, interviewing him for like 4 days.
Really?
It was a blast. He was so nice, such a kind guy, and his family was still out there. He was great. Very quiet man.
It was amazing that he actually would, being a medical doctor and part of the service and all that he would actually risk it all, so to speak, and really say exactly what he saw,
Yeah. And he never changed his tune. And one of the things he had said, he said, look, he said, I was like, what bothers you the most about this? Or what is it that, what are the pros and cons of knowing this? And he said, well, the worst thing is, he says, that everybody wants me to add on to my story. He said, how much more can I add on? I told him the truth. This is all I knew. He said, this is all that I was a part of. And he said, I'll never be able to change my story because it's the truth. But he did have a lot of really cool things occur because of that. I remember him telling me one of the things that he did that he would have never, obviously nobody would have cared to have done this any other time if he had no insight on this. But he said one time a man, and it wasn't the NSA, it was something else. It wasn't NSA, it wasn't CIA, but somebody in one of the defense departments had snagged him in D.C. and I don't know where he first snagged him. I don't know if he was there for some sort of meeting or what, but the guy said, hey, can I talk to you privately about some stuff? He was like, sure. So he took him down. He said, I went into this elevator, Connie, and we went down, 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 down. He said, I don't know where we went. He said, but when we got off, we went into this room. And he described the room, too. He remembered everything pretty well. But he said the guy just sat there and he looked right at him and he asked, what else do you know? We can talk now. What else do you know? And he was like, I don't know anything else. That's all I know. And the guy said, well, he said, that's pretty much, he confirmed it in some way to him that he did confirm that. Yeah, he confirmed it to him, but he didn't go into anything else. But he wanted to know if Jesse knew anything else. Isn't
that something? Wow. Mm-hmm. I got to speak to his son a couple of times, but I never could connect with him since I've had this show. And he told me that, it was really fun growing up, hearing the story young from his grandfather and talking about it with his father. And also that his father, Jesse Marcel Jr., built he put this telescope up in a little observatory right in their backyard. I mean, he was really, really into astronomy and all that. Everything, this whole thing changed his life totally.
Absolutely. And you're talking about Jesse Marcel III.
Yeah, I spoke with Jesse Marcel III.
Yeah.
Nice
I know
guy.
Jesse very well. Yeah, he is. He's a nice guy. Yeah. One of the neat things he said was, because you're like, gosh, did anything ever happen again to you, Jesse? And this is Junior. And he was like, he said, well, one time, and I guess he was like way out over some Iraqi desert or somewhere far away. I cannot remember exactly where he was, but he was actually in military duty when this happened. And he said he was up in some helicopter, and he said they had all their lights off, and, they're kind of incognito flying through the dark, dark sky. And he said he saw a light, and he believed that was something different. He said it really stuck out. He said, I can't say for sure, but he said, I think it was something that was different. So he said that was his only other time.
His only other time. I was just going to ask you if there were any other. Wow.
Yeah. I was glad to have asked him that and that he had an answer.
Right.
You never know. But he was a really nice guy, very quiet. Yeah, and all the Marcels, they were always very kind people.
Right. And, the story of him, seeing the, I believe he was 10 years old or something like that.
11.
And we have a caller coming in, and you know what? It's not working. We tested earlier today. Caller, I'm so sorry.
And you're a whiz, Martin. You're so good with this stuff.
We tested it earlier, and it worked, and for some reason, it's just not working, and I'm trying to figure out what we did different. Sorry, caller, if you are still listening live. So that's it. We're not going to see, I can take this call, but it would put you on hold, and I could hang up by accident and all that, and I can't do it. So anyway, so if you happen to be, all right, I see who it is in the chat room, so we'll go from there.
Okay.
All right, moving on. Kentucky is a place, now you live there currently, right?
Yes, I'm here and helping my mom, who's doing quite well in her rehabilitation after beating cancer. Yay, she's doing great.
Excellent.
79 and strong Willis.
Right. One of the most amazing sightings I ever heard happened right in Kentucky. How does that state rate as far as you know, as far as sightings go?
Well, it's funny. I mean, you just Google, and then all of a sudden, sometimes before I go on the coast, I'll see what has happened recently or something I don't know about, and I'll see all these new things that happen in Kentucky. We got the Bigfoot, we've got UFOs, and of course, the Kelly incident. And
the Kelly incident.
That's cool. That's cool. I went and interviewed. Oh gosh, I'm so horrible at names. I love her to death. She's now pretty much the spokesperson for her granddad, and tells about the stories. I actually went out there where it happened, and that's some scary stuff. Those things that happened in Kentucky.
I want to talk about this because I have tried to get someone on the show that had investigated that previously, and I was working with someone trying to get a hold of someone that had to do. So that was the Kelly Hopkinsville encounter.
Yes, yep.
And can you just give to the listening audience? It's such an amazing, interesting, scary case. Can you give the encounter?
Well, I'm still thinking of the daughter's name. She's going to kill me. She's going to go, God, I can't believe you did that to me. And I love her to death. She's so sweet. Kentucky people, nobody's a stranger. Basically, these little green men, but I don't think they were green. I think they were actually silver. Everybody has seen a picture of these somewhere because it's an iconic look. They're not the regular gray-looking creatures. They're these little bitty creatures, though, that just showed up at these people's door and window, and they were looking in for the most part. they saw lights and where something probably landed, and they did even the next day. But these little creatures were up on their front porch, and they were looking in the window. And this was in this little home in Kentucky. And I guess there were, I don't know, I think it was husband and wife and kids. And
Right.
As Kentuckians, hey, they pulling out the shotguns going, I don't know what you are, but we're going to take you out. You're not going to take our family out. Not knowing anything of what they were, what was going on, but they actually fired at these things. And when they shot them, the bullets it might have knocked them down, or it might have, made them nudge or move, but they came right back up. No big deal. They were up on the roof and everything. They certainly couldn't stop them, and they were scared to death, and just finally ended up getting through the night. And it never happened again. But they didn't know what it was.
Yeah,
they just saw little men. They didn't know what to do.
Yeah, I remember. I don't know if they've ever done a documentary on that or not, but it's just an amazing case. And I'm trying to remember when this was. It was quite a while ago. Was it in the 50s?
It was in the 50s that it happened. Golly, I should have that printed up. I've done stories myself on it.
1955.
Oh, you're pulling it up.
Yeah.
Cool. There you go. Yeah. They have like a little festival there and stuff.
Really?
And yeah. And I think they were silver, and they had just a distinctive look. It wasn't like any. It wasn't like a little gray that you might be used to. It's not like a reptilian. It was these little bitty, kind of. In fact, they have been described as cute. And where, like, the lady of the house was going, no, don't shoot. Where, the husband, it was the father of everyone, was going, no, I don't know what these things are going to do. But they were like, no, they're cute. Maybe they're not here to harm us. No, I'm going to shoot them. I don't know what they're going to do. I'm not going to give them a chance to hurt us. So, I don't know. They just kept coming up to the house and looking through the window and on the roof. It was just crazy. And, of course, after that, the police were all like, well, it's just they're all drunk and doing moonshine. They really, really made fun of it, where they were clearly scared out of their mind.
Right. Yeah. That's what I remember hearing about it. Now, are there any other major cases that you're aware of? UFO encounters?
In Kentucky, I know there are. I know there's quite a bit of them. But that's to me, that's one of the biggest ones. And yeah, there's a whole bunch of other ones. I can't even think of them right now. I should have studied up. I'm so used to everybody asking me about Bigfoot lately.
Well, let's go there.
Oh no, and that's what I've been looking for here too. Yeah, I'm getting set up with Charlie Raymond, who's head of the BFRO here, and so he's going to take me to some cool places, I'm hoping.
Yes, I saw on your Facebook page you're out Bigfooting. You had your Bigfoot outfit on and everything.
I was. Oh, that was that freaky face right where I saw one. Yeah.
So is there a lot of people actually? I did mention in the beginning of the show that we are going to go off topic, so the diehard UFO person may not be real happy, but that's okay. We'll be back to UFOs next week at the UFO Congress out in Phoenix. So what are the Bigfoot encounters out there?
You know what? I don't know that you're going off of UFOs at all. I really don't. I don't think you are. It's funny because some people, you know how people can kind of pigeonhole you into a category. Myself, I grew up in a haunted house, so I know the ghost thing, and I, know the demon thing, and I know that, all the spirits and different things like that, and blah, blah, blah. Then, from there, being open to it, because you have no choice, when you're a kid, it's not like you can just pack up and move. When you've got something in your house lurking around, you're on your own. Mm-hmm. It's survival till college, for me, where I could finally sleep. When I went into the dorm for the first night, I could finally sleep throughout the night without, thinking something was looking at me. But that opens you up to so many of the other things, where I got opened up to the alien things in the UFO and, hybrids and, that kind of thing. And David Jacobs, man, I love him to death. We talked for long, long time, good friend, and learned a ton through him. But when I started working on something, pulling in content, paranormal documentaries into a site called Paranormal TV. And in doing that, I met some Bigfoot people, and through that, they introduced me to, hey, you want to go with us sometime? So I did, and I never thought of it much before that, but right before that was happening, I was really learning a lot about, especially from David Jacobs, and before Bud Hopkins had passed and stuff, but really learning a lot about hybrids and the hybridization project and just abductions, UFOs, just everything. You know, you kind of go from UFO, seeing lights in the sky, to, well, what's in it? So you start going the other way of the ET and the abductees and things like that, so you can see what they're up to. And when I went to this location where they believe there were like 2 tribes and lots of sightings and lots of activity, I was very lucky, first of all, to go to a place like that, because a lot of people never see or experience anything. But when I got there, I was interviewing a whole bunch of people, asking them questions and what's going on and what do you see? What do you hear? What's your story? Because people would just, we were camping out for 4 days and people would just stop by because these people live in this area and they've heard it from their grandparents and their parents and they've seen things and experienced things themselves. But some of the people, when they talked about what they saw and what they heard, they also brought up lights in the sky, UFO things. And then they talked about something called mind speak, which in the UFO world, in the ET world, is telepathy. So I started seeing where things were like, oh my gosh, you guys are talking like abductees are talking, but you're talking about Bigfoot. And they're saying some similar things that side by side, I was going, holy cow. I want to connect all the dots. And when I'm hearing this, I'm very surprised at what I'm hearing. And there's men in black that are involved when it comes to Bigfoot. There's lights in the sky. There's strange lights in the woods. And then, you see these big hairy beings. And these things mind speak. And they're elusive. They're there, then they're not there. You hear these things walking through the woods like elephants, just knocking things down and stepping on branches and logs, and they're cracking under their feet like we would twigs. And then all of a sudden, they're just gone. And you don't hear them run off or walk away or climb a tree. So a lot of things are very similar to me, there's no doubt they exist. It's just, what are they? Are they interdimensional? Are they extraterrestrial? Are they human? I mean, if they're human, they're way, 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 way advanced, without a doubt.
Yeah, and, there's accounts of people saying that they would shoot them, or people who said they have shot them. And I can't imagine, they're just so, I've never seen one. I'm never going to say I've seen one or anything like that. But if something looked human-like to me, I just couldn't imagine shooting it.
I know. I can't even kill a little bug. I don't know, some bugs I can, but for the most part, I take it outside, and save it.
Right.
Yeah, I tell you. Well, that's where a lot of Bigfooters, they don't want to tell their spots because they don't want people to come in. One of the reasons is they don't want people coming in trying to shoot them. They also don't want to tell their spots because that's their spot. That's what they do. They go and hunt, and when you say hunt as Bigfoot hunting, you're just searching and looking. It's never with a gun. When you hear people say that, or they say they're going Bigfooting, they are. The most astonishing thing to me, one of the most astonishing things to me that I realize with Bigfooters is that they have a relationship with these creatures.
I've heard that. People feeding them and things like that.
They give gifts, and gifts come back, and they set up stones a certain way, and the stones are moved around. But they have this, but there's a relationship, like an abductee of ETs. They're going to say, they're taking me in the middle of the night, it's against my will. They're scared. They're not going to be talking good things, though some people do. Some people, they're fine with all that, but but they don't have this relationship like these Bigfooters. These like mountain guys, camping guys, hiking guys, hunting guys. They are, they're all American dudes, and they barely admit sometimes to loving a woman, much less they have this relationship with the Bigfoot. And it is where they have a connection of some sort, and they want it to be stronger. And the Bigfoot knows them, and they know the creature as well. And even if they don't always see each other or never see each other, there is something there that is not in any other type of paranormal or strange anomaly type thing out there that I have seen so far. It's just amazing.
So how do you think this, whatever it is, can be so elusive?
Well, that's why I think it's got to be some sort of interdimensional or extraterrestrial type thing. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I mean, I can tell you from experience that there was a time that I believe there were two about 10 to 12 feet away. And some guy, I was over at the campfire with somebody else, and, we were all, a whole bunch of people out, and some people were out. It was late at night, and there were other people out Bigfooting in some other area. And, we had a little campsite set up, and all these people had come by, and there were some tents where some kids were, and they claim kids are great bait, that these things are very curious with kids. So the kids were already putting to bed in the tent, and it was on the other side of their tents on the tree line that's where these things were heard. And some guy, one of the fathers, said, "Hey, you guys," and his kids were in that tent, and some other kids were in another tent. I was always like, well, "Aren't you all afraid of your old kids?" No, they've never heard our kids. They're just great bait, I'm okay. It's crazy, but
chumming with the kids.
They're chumming with kids, exactly. Chumming with their children.
Yeah.
There you go. And the guy came over, and he was going to bed, to hang out with his son and do the little camping thing. And he came back, though, to the campfire where myself and somebody else was, and said, "Hey, I'm hearing some growls, and we were like, well, okay, all right, So usually when somebody hears something, and by the time you get back over there, it's gone. But we went over there, and darned if you didn't, I heard my first growl. And it was deep. It was like dark. I don't know if you can understand that, but it was like it came from the deepest, darkest depth of some of the biggest lungs I've ever heard. This growl was scary. And we all heard it, and we all were like surprised because it was like 10, 12 feet away from us. Now it's dark. They're at the tree line. We're over where the tent of where the kids are. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I heard it. And then a second one, there was a second growl, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then I realized there's no fence between us and them. This is not a zoo. Mm-hmm. There is no window. There is nothing. There is something there. And it seemed like to me there were two. It seemed like there was one that had a bigger growl than the other. It seemed like, just from my remote viewing teachings and a lot of the things that you are taught to practice with remote viewing is something called ambiance, is where you're always feeling what's around you. You know when somebody walks into the room, if they're behind you. So you start noticing things like that. So to me, it seemed like there were two of them. It seemed like one was squatted down and one was standing up. But even if there was one, or let's just say there wasn't even a Bigfoot over there or not, let's just say it was a wild boar, or let's say it was a bear or a wildcat, a UK wildcat. It was a bobcat, or something like that, okay? Well, it growled twice, and any other animal would have went toward us or clumsily walked around somewhere else if it was a bear, but there was no other noise. We definitely knew where it was. It was a big, two big giant growls, one deeper and bigger than the other. And I actually said, I'm going to shine my light over there. What am I thinking? I'm going to see this thing before it comes over here. And I shined it, and there was nothing there. There was nothing in the spot where this thing was heard. Nothing. And believe me, there was a lot of foliage around. There's a lot of, you could not walk without somebody hearing you, especially something that size. So if it was some other animal, there's no way it could have been any other animal, because you would have heard them. You would have heard them walking away.
How'd you sleep that night?
It was these people sleep on the ground. I don't know what they're thinking. I mean, there's spiders everywhere and snakes, and they're sleeping on the ground. I got to have, if I'm going Bigfooting, hey, look, I don't need to go to the local hotel, but I do need to have something that is lifted off the ground, and I need to have something that is thick walled around me, because these things are real, and I don't want them getting as close as they've gotten to me in the past. There's no doubt to me, and I don't, I'll take it to my grave. These things are real. I'd like to know what they are, and I do believe that it could be something extraterrestrial. They're highly advanced, and you know that when you're around them. You just know that when you're around them.
Wow. Well, we're at the top of the hour, and I just take a little break here, but I'm not going to play music this time. So we'll just keep going. And one of the things someone wanted to, there's a couple of questions that someone had up here, and one person said that he had heard that Bigfoot hunters are more successful when they don't bring cameras, guns, as if the Bigfoot knows their intentions. Have you ever heard of that?
I have. And I'm just telling you the experiences I know and the people I've talked to and what I've learned. There's still so much more for me to learn, and I'm getting with some of the best people out there to learn from the best, and I'm very happy about that. William Strangeness is one of those people. I'm just meeting Todd Neese over there with doing some Bigfoot stuff as well, and Charlie Raymond with the BFRO here in Kentucky, and Cliff and Bobo and all those guys. But from what I've learned in just the 5 years that I've been blessed to be in areas where things are, and I've seen stuff and heard stuff and been a part of things, I've learned from some of the best. And what they say, there's a couple pretty interesting things. Don't take a gun out there with you, because if they know you got a gun, then they're not going to show themselves, and they know you have a gun. This is what I'm told. Now, people will have guns in the campsite because, hey, a bear or something else might show up. So they're packing, but if they're going out looking for Bigfoot, they don't take their gun with them, and they will make that known. Do not take your gun, and if you got one, I don't care. Don't hide it from me. It's not about me. It's about the Bigfoot, and he'll know if you got it even hidden. The other thing is, if you're walking around with someone that's not like a good person, it's not like the good guy, or maybe smart aleck, or like these aren't real. One of those naysayer kind of guys. Mm-hmm. Forget it. Don't walk with one of those because they say you'll never see one, because they don't want to be around. The Bigfoot are like, nope. I guess they have a choice, and if you're not liking them, they're probably not going to like him. I don't know what the theory is behind that, but they say that, and I got to tell you, I've walked with people before, and I thought to myself too, I don't want to be walking with this person. I don't think I'm going to see anything with this guy.
Now, what do you think about Dr. Melba Ketchum's work?
I'm glad when anybody helps out and does work and tries to do something legit. I got to tell you, I can't tell you much about that research at all, because I haven't studied it myself. She was supposed to have
filmed a female too, I believe. I remember hearing her speak, and I think it was probably on Coast to Coast, and she was saying that they had film of a woman Bigfoot, like sleeping or something.
Well, I can't talk to it because I don't know about it. Mm-hmm. a lot of people will read books, and a lot of people will read Facebook pages, and a lot of people will, watch movies or documentaries and things and really study up that way, where, I'll do that if, I just want to go do it myself. I don't want to hear everybody else's. It's not that I am I don't know. I just kind of do it myself. And if I end up, I'm so busy with other things that if I've got time, I want to go do it myself.
Now, were you really
do the research?
But did that not scare
it.
the heck out of you when you heard the growling?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It was, when I realized there's not a fence there, there's nothing there, this thing's right there. And just realizing it. And when you heard the growl, it was just so big. You knew whatever was there was giant.
I'm going to ask you a kind of a weird question. Was there any odor?
No, there wasn't. There wasn't at that time. No. Some people say some smell and some don't. And maybe you're downwind or then you're not,
Oh, the Matthew up on the message board wants to get back to something he heard you say earlier. What's your theory on the hybrids? On hybrids?
I've met some people that say they are hybrids. And, I don't know. And then I've met some other people that believe they've met hybrids. And that's always interesting.
Well, what was your feeling on the people that claim they were?
The ones that claim they were, one guy, I got to tell you, he's got some powers. There's no doubt. He's got some strong abilities that are unique. I don't know of what degree he might be, or a lot of people say, well, we're all hybrids, okay. But I just don't know, I don't know for sure. There's times where he totally freaked me out where I'd be like, yep, you're a hybrid. And then other times he's just so, normal, good old guy. So I'm not sure. But talking to David Jacobs, he was like, a hybrid will be, in his latest book will tell you more about it, but at one point personally he was telling me, he said, these things don't understand, they're learning from the abductees. Okay, let's say you're an abductee, okay, and if you understand the hybridization project, right, where they take the egg and the sperm and, abduct you and do all that stuff, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, at one point when you get older and they're done taking all that from you, they still, still abduct you. This is what's the theory is. They still will abduct you, and then what they do is they kind of use you to learn from you. Either you're going to teach some of the hybrids, or you're doing something on the ship that they need you to help out with, or there's another thought that the hybrids that were made up on the ship will come down to you, the abductee that, for years and years and years they did the hybridization part of it, and now they're using you to learn how to be a human on Earth. So they find out how to eat a ham sandwich. They find out how to make a bed. They find out what to do at a baseball game. They find out how to fit in. They find out how to tie a shoe, what to wear. What do I do with this ham now that I bought it at the store? Well, you put it in the refrigerator from there. Then what you do is you cut it and you eat a ham sandwich. Here's how you go to the bathroom. So now when you're abducted, you are teaching them how to live like us. So he had told me, David Jacobs had said, he said, if you meet a real hybrid, he said, they are going to, listen to me, hybrid, like Stewie on Family Guy, hybrid, hybrid. He had said that they're going to be, they're learning to be humans because they've lived on the ship all their lives. So they're learning to be humans. He said, so they will do things that are so out of context that he said you'll know that if you're looking for one of these things and you're kind of around that vicinity of maybe an abductee, you'll know because of like space. They don't understand space, and they don't understand like sound. Like, okay, for instance, if you and I were standing next to each other, we'd have a casual conversation. However, if we were across the room from each other, we'd have to talk a little louder because you're at the other side of the room. Well, one of these hybrids would be really close to you and just talk like that because they don't understand the difference, that they're supposed to, talk a little lower because you're right there and you can hear them. So it's little tiny things like that they haven't polished up yet, that's what they're doing in order to fit in. That's, some of the theories.
Yeah, I had a conversation with David Jacobs a while ago. Actually getting to meet him next week.
Oh, he's great. You'll love him. He's a ball. He's a fun guy.
He really seems it. It'll be interesting. And I kind of have a hard time buying all that stuff, but who am I to say? It's all interesting either way.
It's funny that if you start looking into lights in the sky, the next thing you do, you just keep getting deeper into things. And at one point, I remember going, oh yeah, abductions, right? Yeah. But then the more you study each thing, the deeper it gets, and you start understanding how these things make sense. And with Jacobs, he's done decades of hypnosis, and his file cabinets are unbelievable, and he'll just spit it out to you as if it's hey, this is the way it is. I love him.
You have a question up on the message board. Indigo Swan's book,
Penetration.
Oh yeah, says he saw an alien produce department. I'm trying to read this. Alien in a produce department at a grocery store. Has any other viewers she knows claims to have targeted alien hybrids?
Well, aliens for sure. Hybrids, I don't know if anybody worried about getting into a hybrid, but I don't know. But those particular ones, probably because that was Ingo Swann and Penetration. That's one of the best books ever. Read it. If you get your hands on it, read it. It's unbelievable. Ingo, before he passed away, and, after writing that, he said that was, real. And it looks like it's written to be real. Even Richard Dolan will say a couple of different things about the bald-headed guys in it. For the person that's listening that knows that book. Remote viewers. Here's the deal with remote viewing and remote viewing aliens or anything esoteric. Is as a remote viewer, it's very disciplined martial art. It truly is. It's extremely disciplined. And what happens is after you do your viewing, you follow the protocol, and there's different phases, and you have different tools, and it's really cool. So once you've done your target and you still don't know what it is, you've just done this session, and you've just put down on paper your thoughts and what has come to your mind and what you've seen and felt and smelt and things like that. So when you actually get to see what your target was, when someone says, here's what the target was, you're like, oh my gosh, I was there, but you don't know what it is until you see it. And then I was there. Now, when it comes to something esoteric, where we don't have proof of it, we don't have any feedback, then you don't know for sure if your data is correct, right? If you said remote view my house, Connie, and I remote viewed your house, at least I could see a picture of it later and say, oh, I was right here, and we've got the data. But if you say, there's this Martian that happens to be lost on Jupiter, check it out, check out the target and tell us what you see. Well, there's no way to prove what you found. So that's the hard part of doing esoteric targets. However, if you are constantly remote viewing and you are recording your data and you are going back and looking at, your targets that are real targets, and you can see how well you are doing, and you can look and go, hey, I'm 70% correct every time I remote view, or I'm 80% correct every time I remote view a target. Well, then you can kind of assume that when you do an esoteric one, that you might be 70% correct or 80% correct when you do that. So that's how they look at that, because there's no way to know your answer.
That's right. Now, so we've hit on a lot of different subjects. So let's talk about, you said earlier that you grew up in a haunted house. I want to hear what that was about.
I'm in it now.
Oh, the same place.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's here anymore. I don't, or it's cool with me now, I guess. I don't know. It's like, you grew up, Connie. I don't know. Yeah, I tell you, it was scary. Every night of my life, it didn't matter if it was 99 degrees in the house. I would be bundled up with every part of my body under the blankets. I could not let one part out because I thought it would be touched, and it seemed that it would. Yeah, there was something here. I don't know what. My sister also knew. My mother would also know. My dad didn't believe any of that stuff. A brother of mine didn't believe any of that stuff. But two of my other brothers, we had 5 kids in the family. 2 other ones were like, yeah, there was something in that house. Yeah, something down in the basement. If you ever went downstairs, however, at night it would, kind of hang out up here and upstairs, and I always felt that thing. And you know what it does as a child? It builds when people, they want to be sensitive and they want these abilities. Well, there was no, whether I wanted them or not, I was going to get them, because as a kid, I was scared to death. So I developed them just primarily out of survival as a child of, where is this thing in the house? Because I want to be as far away as possible. So that's where I developed sensitivity to things. You never know what you're going to be sensitive to or not, but I was certainly sensitive to that and knew where it was and would go the other way. Now, looking back, it was never anything that hurt me or anybody else, but just the pure presence of something there that was so strong. It's such a just, it wasn't like this disbursement and, you barely felt something. It was a strong presence, without a doubt. And it was there. And it was looking over you. It's like, if you're like a guardian angel, can you go over to the corner and look at me and watch me over? Don't, watch over me. Don't be right over me, please. So it was scary. It was scary as a kid, but I think it was definitely good.
Well, I'm going to tell,
evil.
Since this is a UFO show, I've never been able to tell this story. So,
since go for it. Blame me.
Yeah, blame you. So my father had bought a house in Kittery, Maine, and it was right on a busy Route 1. And it had a long history and a recorded history that there was an Indian attack on the house in the early 1700s. And unfortunately, this is really sad, the children were killed and the woman was taken away. She got up in the middle of the night, cut out of the tent or whatever it was, and stabbed the person next to her. Anyway, she got away.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well, that was the story about the house and all that. Well, my sister had stayed there, and she had gotten out of the hospital, had surgery, and I went to visit her, and she said, this place is haunted, don't you? And I said, no, I never heard that. And she goes, oh, yeah. She said, there's a little girl in a white dress, and I've seen her. And she said, I said something to Dad, and he says, oh, yeah, he sees her all the time. So I said, wow. And then so I stayed there. I never saw anything. But what would happen was the door would latch had like a hasp, a hook hasp, right. And somehow it would always be hasped on the other side. And I'd have to walk all the way around and up another stairway and go down a different stairway to unlatch it. It was really strange. It's not something that would happen naturally, but that was the biggest thing that I saw when I was there. So anyway, the mall comes in. It buys my father's property. they pick up, instead of destroying this beautiful house, luckily they moved it down the road about a half a mile. And so I was driving by there years later, and I saw an antique shop, and I'm in the antiques world, so I pulled in and talked to the person at the antique shop, and after a while I felt sort of comfortable with him. He seemed like a cool guy, so I said to him, I'm going to ask you kind of a really weird question here. Has anybody ever said anything about this house being haunted? And he looks at me, he goes, do you mean the little girl in the white dress?
Oh.
And so he says, not only did my daughter see it, but he says, go in, the accountant's in there now, go in and talk to them. So I did, and the not the person that was there, but another person there saw a little girl in a white dress. So I don't know. There's my ghost story.
What's your UFO story?
Oh, the listeners have heard it so many times.
More time.
It's kind of bland. It's nothing really exciting, but to me, it was like a moment that kind of changed everything because I just couldn't believe my eyes. Basically, I was sitting in a hot tub, and, I get a lot of grief for that. People say, oh, you're drinking or whatever, but no, I wasn't. I was sitting in a hot tub, and something caught my eye, and it was about 8 o'clock or so at night. And right over my head came this perfectly shaped disc, and it had a little, like a tinge, a light blue tinge, almost like a glowing. And it stopped, and just abruptly stopped, and then headed out toward Monterey. And so, Carmel. No, wait a minute. I was in Carmel Valley, headed toward Monterey. That's right. So anyway, I got out of the hot tub and called the police department, and, it never really went anywhere. But the thing that really impressed me the very most about that sighting, and I had never heard it before, and now I hear it all the time, is that there was absolutely no sound. And I just couldn't get how this thing was moving about and not making any sound at all. That was the most baffling part to me. And I never thought of taking a picture or anything like that. Didn't have a camera there or anything. So that's it.
Yeah. No, that's, it's just amazing, though. It changes your life. If you remote view, you'll go, oh, my gosh, it changes your life. If you, see lights like that, it changes your life. Some sort of Bigfoot thing changes your life, changes everything you've ever been taught. But, no, that's not bland. People would die to have just that sighting whatsoever. A lot of people don't realize you just got to look up. When I was living in Philly, nobody's looking up. You're walking New York City. Nobody's looking up because they're worried about, walking to a pothole, walking to a person. They don't look up. But
they're worried about money problems or, the real world.
They're on their phone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're
texting. Yeah.
Running into things. Yeah. Nobody's ever looking up. But when you do take the time to look up, there's so many things you can see. I'll tell you what was cool recently when some other country people were talking about this. It confirms something that I saw long ago when I lived in Orlando, Florida. I kid you not. It was crazy. Nobody would believe this one, but I was driving in the car and in the sky. It was weird because it was the Orlando skyline I saw, and I was on I-4 heading into the city, and I saw what was like a ship in the sky kind of thing, like a mothership. It had to be gigantic for me to see it from as far as I was, but it was behind a building from the skyline. Then it moved, to where I could see it, and it was a skyline. It was like a skyline floating in the air. And I was like, okay, I would understand a UFO going by. Okay, but this is a city on like a board kind of thing, just floating by like a ship. But it looked like a skyline of a city. And I looked, really I shook my head. I was like, no way. And then I saw it again. And I think it went behind a building, then came back out of a building. But I saw it. And I thought, that's a skyline. How could that even be happening? How could that even float by? How can that go by? However, it was just recently that some other country, some people were talking about how they saw this like city skyline going across the sky like on a ship, and I was like, I've seen that.
That is kind of weird. Strange.
Yeah, I was glad to get some confirmation from other people in some other country also seeing the same thing. Maybe it was the same one floating around, but I'll tell you.
Getting back to ghosts,
Sure.
I had another story. I'm not going to really tell it.
Come on.
But no. But anyway, I had a conversation with my son once and just told him, this really, really happened, and I saw this firsthand, and he said, the amazing part of it is there is an answer. There is an answer on this, how this happened. And it's true. There's an answer to every single thing, whether it's Bigfoot, whether it's UFOs, whether it's ghosts. The thing that people are encountering is something. And what that is a plain puzzle.
It is. And I enjoy talking about it. It's much more fascinating to theorize and, try to figure it out, put it together, instead of talking about politics and people being angry and mad and war and, wish we could all talk about this kind of stuff instead of all the other stuff, because it brings escapism, it brings, wonderment, it brings, stretching your mind out, taking it outside of the box. If we all thought like this, it'd be a whole lot different.
Yeah. Now, going back to your career, has this affected your career? You're mentioning, stay away from it and try to stay away from it, but has it affected your career in a negative way, in any type of way?
Yeah, I think there's, I think so. I think, I don't know. I can't pinpoint some things exactly because for the most part, if people they're not going to say, that, because you could probably sue them and, that'd be what a great new thing for someone to be able to sue. You all didn't give me a gig because I believe in UFOs. That'll happen next, with all these other types of suings out there, But you definitely find out who your friends are and who cares about you when you talk about these things openly.
Or I think there's some people that are just totally open to it. I've brought up the subject when I feel comfortable with someone, and even though it's a friend that I know would never think of it, after a while you feel comfortable enough, you bring it up, and you'd be surprised. Like, for instance, UFOs, how many people will say, well, I never saw anything, but I have a friend that swears he saw this, or, there's a lot of connections out there when it comes, at least, to the UFO field.
I agree with you on all of the stuff. It's just when it comes to somebody that has a big brand name product that they want to sell nationally, they're looking at you like, no, I don't think we want a UFO nut to sell this kind of thing. And you're like, are you kidding? Because they want truth, right? They want honesty and truth. And one of the things when they've done TV focus groups and things on me, it was always, she's honest. She's one of us. We believe her. She's very down to earth and trusting. And I'm like, no, you guys, you have to understand that people in the UFO world, in the Bigfoot world, in the ghost world, we're all the people you want to know because we're trying to get to the truth. We're good people. We're truth seekers. And you just can't get that through some people's heads. So, but there's a ton of other people that they will never admit it to anybody else that they work with, but they'll come over on the side and talk to me. Hey, Connie.
Yes.
You know what I saw?
Yeah. And you know what? I bet it's even that way at NASA.
Oh, my gosh. When I lived in Orlando, got to see a lot of the space shuttles go up and got to meet some people with Cape Canaveral and things like that. And true rocket scientists. How cool is that when you actually meet somebody and they're a rocket scientist? That's like, wow, that's so cool. You're a rocket scientist. Every joke we've ever said, what do you think? I'm a rocket scientist. So, you actually meet a lot of them out there. And, when I've talked to them, I've said, well, what do you know? What do you know about ET? What do you know about the moon? What do you know? Well, I don't know what you're talking about. They're very scientific, and they are really all we know is this one particular area, and we don't know anything else. We work on one thing, and then we pass it on to another department, and then they take it and build on from there. And so
I've heard that before too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, so they keep it to where you don't know anything. And I'm like, look, it's right under your nose. Step back and look, And some of them kind of have since that was years ago when I was there. But some of them, are thinking about it more, which I can't understand. How could you not have thought about that before? I mean, if we're up doing this, if we're getting something into space and traveling around,
right.
What do who's way advanced more than us? And I mean, well, what do you think? Are you just a UFO kind of guy, or do you get into the alien thing? Do you believe they're here? What's your thought?
Oh, sure. I think it's a very good chance. I think it's the most logical the most logical answer to the questions of the unexplainables. Which is a small percent, but it only takes one. But I do believe, I guess I would have to say publicly that I do believe that we are being visited. And I say that because of what I just said, but also of what you said as well, as we're out there. We have the capability to go to the moon, which is a very, very short distance when in comparison to
right.
anything else.
True.
But we're very young, and we're 4 billion years old, when there could be 10 billion year old, or there are 10 billion year old solar systems where there could be, of course, they say, 97% on this planet of species have become extinct. Well, that could happen on other planets, but also they could get through that and progress and become advanced. And just look how advanced we've become in the last, I can say 20 years, but in the last 100 years.
Oh, yeah.
100 some odd years ago, we didn't even know how to fly. And, now we're sending probes out to Mars. And sure, some of what people see that cannot be explained, may be some type of probe coming in from another planet, but still, I think it's all possible. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I think, I don't know all my, I have random thoughts of this happening, but I can always say what I've seen. And there's so many different things I've seen along the way that are just, that like the world just stops me and says, look, and that happens with people all the time, and they just don't listen to their intuition. So I would, always tell people, there's different thoughts in our head constantly going around. And if you can get to the initial thoughts before all the other ones come tumbling in of answering whatever that first thought is, and trying to tear it down or give it a reason, because we're taught so many things in the world. If you go to your initial first thought, and it takes a little bit of thinking and learning and teaching that to yourself. I read a book about it when I was young. I just thank goodness that that occurred, because it allowed me to find the first thoughts that enter your head. Those are your answers. Those are usually your correct answers. The second and third thoughts are what Uncle Joe taught you and Aunt Betsy said to you one day, and that's all based on their experiences that may mean nothing to what you're dealing with. But thank goodness I listen as well. If you get something that says stop and look, stop and look. If something says hold up, go do this, turn left, turn right, go straight, do it. Trust your instinct when that occurs, and it's usually that thought that is real, that is giving you direction in life, that you usually first say no to it. The first time in your head where you go no, think about it and go, wait a minute, did I just tell myself no? Because you're your own thoughts are never going to tell yourself no. Something else may come in that's not your thought that you say no. That's when you go, whoa. And I started learning how to do that at one point. And every time that I went no to a thought in my head, I went, oh, wait a minute. What did I say no to? And I would do what I'd said no to. I'd go to that thought. And one time I was in New York. Several times in New York. Go to New York, people, and you'll experience quite a bit. There was a time in New York, it was absolutely insane, and I do believe it was extraterrestrial related, because it just, when something's ET related, it seems to like scramble your mind so you'll forget it and block it out, kind of thing. It was the craziest thing, but I was walking and something said, look at this thing. And I looked, and, New York City's full of beautiful trench coats and fedora hats and, that New York look, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what I saw. However, this fedora and this trench coat and these baggy dress pants were very, very, very baggy, and they seemed to be on some weird creature that I don't think was of this world. And I can't say what it was. I don't know if it was a gray in there or what, but I kid you not, it was the craziest looking thing I've ever seen. And it caught my attention to look. And when I looked at it, it knew I looked at it. And something told me, don't look at it. You know it's there, but just play it off. Don't scream. Don't run. But whatever this thing was, it had shoes on it. It had pants on it. The pants were way, way, way too big. Maybe it was a hybrid. It had a trench coat, and it was tied as tight as it could go. So you knew this thing was a scrawny, tiny thing. Everything about it was too big, and the fedora was on it and way too big as well. And you think, oh, maybe it's a scrawny little old guy, or I don't know what this thing was, but it knew I looked at it, and we were stopped at a corner. I passed by it at one point, and when I passed by it, I looked back at it, and it looked back at me. And they say always be careful of that, different people. But I can't even explain what it was, but it was the weirdest thing ever. And I remember just being at the stoplight, because I think I must have turned around and go, I got to go back. I don't know what the freak that was, but I got to go see it. And just remember the visual of it. It was something trying to look like a New Yorker and fit in. And, when you're in New York, you can kind of look like anything and fit in, except an ET, but if you put the fedora on, the trench coat, the baggy pants and shoes, and you just walk, even if it doesn't look like you're walking right, it works. And it did. And it was very wrong. If you ever walked around, you've been around something that was just not right, and you just know it's not right, your whole inside say, this is not right, something is wrong here. And I know people that listen to this understand that, because we're all trying to figure out what that is. When one of our senses is telling us something's just not right, it does not compute. That's the feeling that was going on in this thing that I was seeing, and it knew that I saw it. And it didn't go after me, or didn't say, shh, or anything like that. But my instinct was it was a gray.
Wow, weird.
Yeah,
huh?
Yeah, and I'm sure I'll get letters on that or anything, but
well,
but I don't care. It's what I saw.
Okay, here's a question up on the message board. When abductees, especially women, claim they were abducted and had their babies taken out, then they get abducted again, and they're able to visit their hybrid child. Why are they dressed from the 1800s? Have you ever heard that?
Who's dressed like the 1800s?
The children are dressed as if they were in the 1800s.
Oh,
I've never heard that before, but that's a question up on the message board.
Yeah, I've not heard that one before either. And I get most of that information, David Jacobs, he's like the man on that. I know that they go back up. You know, you're constantly being taken up. If you're an abductee, you are for life, according to him. And, you know, that's where they later on learn from you, or you become a teacher or something like that. But I know that they've been taken up, and they are to, according to him, they are to, you know, they're shown their baby. And they just know that's what that is their child. They know from, I don't know if it's like telepathy happening, or they know that they know. A lot of times the abductees can't say, they just say they know that that's their child. And usually, like, the ET is telling them to, you know, touch the child, nurture the child in some way, and they'll let it touch it. And then they kind of like back off, like, okay, that's enough, kind of thing. Because I think from what Jacobs has even said, or maybe just other people theorize that, you know, they don't know anything about love or touch, or, you know, that's what they don't have. That's something they're missing. And they're trying to kind of get that from us and try to give that child, you know, human touch, where, you know, don't know. That's all theory. But I've never heard that they were dressed like the 1800s, you know, never heard that.
You know, I've heard
that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say along the same lines of what you're saying, is that there's it's very cold and calculated, whatever, you know, the abduction experience. But then I heard one of the Allagash incident people talk. I'm going to say it's Jack Weiner, and he was not on my show. I had Jim Weiner, his brother, and a person involved in the Allagash abduction on my show. It was absolutely great. But Jack Weiner was interviewed by Alejandro Rojas last year, and he said that it was like a total polar opposite, that his encounter had everything to do with love, like he couldn't even explain it. He said, and he had never talked about it before. Until that interview, and that's the only time I've ever heard anything like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that they have the total opposite effect than what Jacobs talks about and Bud Hopkins talked about. I mean, they talk very, very negative. And then there's so many other people that, it's all about love and ascension, and they're wonderful, and they're here to take care of us. And, you know, you hear different things from different people. Maybe they're different species. Maybe it's a ploy. Maybe it's just something altogether different, you know?
Most likely that's the latter.
Yeah, I guess so. I know some people, I guess they're abductees when they don't want to be taken. They're contactees when they're okay with it. I think I got that right. It's been a while since I remember that distinction. And one of my friends, really cool guy, I think he's come out in the world of being an abductee, but he hated it at one point that he was being taken. And then at one point, he loved it. He was helping them. He said he was going to, do whatever he could. He was very cooperative. He looked forward to it. And then, it was just taking his life away, his personal life away. And then he hated it again. And so that's where he stands now. It's like these things have messed up my life. My human life has been torn apart from them wanting to do what they wanted to do with me and get what they wanted. And they didn't ask me for it, and they didn't care what it did to me.
I can totally see that part of it.
Yeah. I can too.
Here's a question up on the message board. Earlier you mentioned Bud Hopkins. Did you know him personally? If so, did he ever talk about the hybrid theory with you directly? Dr. Jacobs claims Bud Hopkins shared his hybrid views, but no one can substantiate that, basically.
Well, they were buddies and best friends there, and Jacob spoke you're going to love him. You're going to love that man's a talker. He's fun. He's very interesting to listen to. But I remember he was telling me, hey, I was into the UFOs at one point, and then I realized they're only lights in the sky. And he said, that's all they are. They're lights in the sky. And we can't even prove that. We hit brick walls. He said, whenever you try to research it and figure out and try to find out what it was, because no one was going to tell you. And he said, so I wanted to know what was inside those white lights, and that's the only, or those lights, and that's how the way to do it is by abductees, that claim to have been in there. And he had discovered that by going to see Hopkins at one point, and then, basically from there, I guess they became the best of friends. And I met him before he passed away. I met him when he was really, really, really sick. Though I loved his work previously, and he was on every documentary, and so was Jacobs, all in their younger days, right? Mm-hmm. But I met Bud. He was very sick, but he was still walking around and talking away. And what I remember, when you meet them when they're sick like that, you don't really want to bring up all the topics and questions you want to ask, because you don't know if he wants to. You don't know how much energy he's got to give you. He's on his last leg there. It may not be what he wants to talk about to somebody. I was one of many people he's met along the way that wanted to know more, right? So I didn't get into asking those questions. His books will tell you what he believed, but they were buddies, and one of the things I remember Bud Hopkins said, though, he was sitting down at the time, or I think he just sat down, and he was very frail. What a wonderful man, though, till the end, smart as a whip, but he had said there was some sort of award that he won or was given at one of the events, conferences or conventions or something, and it was just, I don't know, I don't remember what the award was, but it was a little gray alien trophy like thing, and he won it for his achievements of some sort, and it was abductee related, and it was a cartoony kind of alien, the little pot belly, if I remember right. He showed me it, and back then, it wasn't like we all had our little, I don't know, at least I didn't take pictures of everything. I wish I would have, especially of him holding that. But the award was like an achievement type thing and a recognition. However, he had said, and I'm sure he's told other people, if he told me, and there were Jacobs was in the room too, and someone else was in the room, but so I don't think I'm telling something that was just privy to me. But he was like upset about it, because he said, here's this, I know they gave it to me in kindness and this great achievement and the best intentions. He said, but the last thing I want is to have a trophy of a creature that the people that I've studied and hypnotized and worked with for decades were scared out of their mind. Their life was just traumatized. They were trampled on. They were scooped on. They were, things were done to them. Their bodies were invaded. They were taken without their will. Their lives are messed up. And he said, so I don't want a trophy for that. Here they give me a trophy for that, and they think that's a good thing. He says, I don't like even looking at it. And that was pretty interesting to hear, because, he really, really, really cared about and believed the people he had worked with and heard those stories.
Yes. I know, I guess a few years after he died, his ex-wife tried to discredit him, which was kind of sad. I don't know if you ever heard any of that. But
I did. I heard a little bit about that from David, and I was just like, ooh, I want to stay out of that, because I think she lived right downstairs from him or something like that in New York. And, and well, then there's another chick way out like in Australia or somewhere that's just trying to discredit David.
That was David Jacobs. Yeah.
Yeah. And David, if you know David at all, oh my gosh, his poor wife passed not long ago. David is all about his wife, and No.
That woman's David said that woman has made it her life's work.
Oh, it's awful.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Well,
and maybe because he touched on something, maybe because he was right on and somebody else put somebody up to that. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. So we have about 7 minutes left. So one thing we haven't talked about, and that is time travel.
Ooh.
I used to say years ago, well, I guess they'll never invent time travel in the future because we never see anyone, kind of as a joke. But now, people are looking. I think it's pretty interesting that people are actually looking through early photographs, or there's a group of people at a university. I don't know if you heard about this, but they're looking through 19th century photographs and early 20th century photographs, trying to see any signs of time travel. And they've come up with a few different images, but, I don't think so. I've looked at them and, they all...
They have cell phones, right?
Yeah, there's the cell phone thing. And,
right.
Yeah, and all that. But do you think, I guess the question would be, do you think that's ever possible? And if it's possible, would it, is it something that we could say like that a UFO could be a time traveler?
Well, one of the things about if you take remote viewing classes, with the psychic spy guys, whoever's still teaching them, or like Lori Williams, who learned under Lynn Buchanan. That's why I say her name. But you will hear stories from these guys. You won't just learn how to remote view, but you will learn stories of these guys like this kind of stuff, especially when you do get in remote viewing. All of a sudden there's parallel time lines and you get it, and then there's these time loops that occur. So that's a really good area for people that are into time travel to get into, because when you remote view, you can time travel with your mind. You can go in space and time anywhere you want, left, right, up, down, back, forward. Yeah,
someone just posted on the message board, they wondered if you believe that's true, that you could go in time when you're remote viewing.
Yeah, because I know I went back in time.
I thought you mentioned
where that picture was. Yeah, absolutely. And I believe so. It's crazy, but when you do it, that's one of the things about me is I don't want to just read what somebody else has said can happen. I want to do it myself. So, I'll go take classes, or I'll go out into those woods where you say something is, or go to that area where you say there's lights in the sky. So I want to experience it for myself and see it and feel it and know it. But there's a lot of people that say that they can build a time machine, and I've heard from some people that say they have time machines. So and some people say they know exactly how to make one. They just need the funding for it. So I've heard all sorts of things like that. But here's something kind of unique, and it is a Bigfoot related. But where you were talking before, Bigfooters will give gifts. Whether it's fruits or putting rocks in a really neat way, or like I like to take a ball, kind of throw the ball around, mess with the ball a little bit, have it in nice colors, and then leave it behind and see if, they get it and play with it. I mean, it's a ball. Come on, that's cool. Where, some people leave stuffed animals and things like that. Now, what happens later from people is they say that later on they will find that gift that they've given to the Bigfoot. They'll find it given back to them, and it'll be in an area of the woods that even the person that originally gave it to the Bigfoot, they don't even know they're going to go through that area that day, but the Bigfoot did know they were going to go through it, and they set it up in a place of, hey, here's this gift for you, where they know they would see it. Here it is back, playing this like neat little game. Well, one of the things that one of the guys gave, this is what I was told, they gave a watermelon. It was this really nice, you know how watermelons are striped and they can have different stripes and definite, looks. Well, apparently one of these watermelons had a certain stripe, pattern on it that, naturally where it could be remembered. And I don't know if they took a picture of it or what, but they gave that as a gift to the Bigfoot. Here's a nice watermelon. Well, it was gone from where they laid it. So they're like, all right, they got it. But as these gifts have showed up in the past somewhere else. If it's a doll or a stuffed animal or a ball or anything, that's cool. It's you see it 3 months later somewhere, that's cool. But when you see a watermelon that was ripe and the distinctive marks on it, and I think it was, I don't know if it was 3 months later, it was a significant amount of time that thing should have rotted, and it didn't. They got it back, and they knew it was the same one, and it was like months down the road where there's no way it could have still been as ripe as it was, and it was left for them. So some of the theories,
time-traveling watermelon.
Yeah, some of the theory is possibly, it's taken on a ship or something, and they, zoom somewhere, and they come back, and it's been months for us, but it's been no time for them.
Strange.
I don't know, but that's kind of cool.
That is. Well, Connie, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks. Same here. Same here, Willis.
Yeah. And you don't have a website, right?
I do. My website is more related to, it was made for agents and directors and producers to look at, but it's conniewillis.com, and that's the stuff you're going to see on there. I guess I need someone to update it and throw all my cool E.T. Bigfoot stuff on there. But do know that there is another Connie Willis out there.
Yes, she's a writer.
Yep. And she's the female Stephen King, man. She's That's right. Hot. I mean, you can't find me because she's all over Google first. So she's the woman. So
all right. Well, thanks so much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun, and enjoy the conference in Phoenix.
I sure will. I'm going to talk about that.
Tell
all right,
Alejandro
everyone.
I said hello.
I certainly will. All right, everyone. So I have a few people to thank. First of all, our guests, of course, Peggy Shining for managing the Facebook page, Carrie Lloyd Whitehouse for our music, Alejandro Rojas for the news. And next week, of course, we're going to be live right at the Phoenix UFO Congress, and we're going to have a great roundtable there with all kinds of people. It should be a lot of fun. Be a little tricky to put together, but I hope it goes off without a hitch. And so that is going to be it for us, and we'll see you from Phoenix live next week right here at podcastufo.com. All right, everyone, we'll see you next week, and remember to keep your eyes to the sky.